So, there we were in 2019 at a big coffee trade show in Boston, hoping to meet some promising producers to help us get to our goal of being 100% farm direct. It was getting late, and Bob says, "Hey, Michelle, you want to just go get a drink at the bar?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, I do." And as we turn to head that direction, I look over in the corner, and I see this woman talking with her hands. And there's just something about her. I look over at Bob and say, "Hey, we should just go see what she has to say." 3 months later, we were on a plane to Nicaragua to meet the Ferrer family. I'm Michelle Fish. My husband, Bob, is the co-CEO of one of the largest coffee shop chains in the United States. And together, we are the founders of One Big Island in Space. We're on a mission to change the way coffee is bought and sold around the world. We've been traveling the globe looking for millions of pounds of coffee from producers that are doing the right thing for their people, for the planet, and for their communities. When we find them, we connect them to a marketplace of buyers that will pay them the right price for their coffee, now and for years to come. It's a model that is beyond fair trade and beyond USDA organic. We call it Farm Direct. Our visits don't always work out, but we won't stop going until we can put a name, a face, and a place on every cup of coffee we serve. In 1972, a young married couple living in Managua, Nicaragua, Liana, a lawyer, and Carlos, an engineer, decided to buy a coffee farm in the mountains. It was a 4-hour drive from the city, and it was going to be a fun weekend place to get away. They called it El Recreo, which means playtime. Miriam is the daughter of Carlos and Liana, and she is the woman Bob and I chanced to meet in Boston. She is the reason we are here. Her love for her parents runs deep, and she and her husband Hector have dedicated their careers to selling the coffee grown at El Recreo. They run a couple of coffee shops by the same name in Boston, but they've struggled to move enough coffee at high enough prices to keep El Recreo financially healthy. As we drive up and out of the capital city, the sound and smell of the traffic gives way to fresh air, and the mountains rise up in front of us. We stop for lunch at a place Miriam says serves excellent Nicaraguan cuisine. After lunch, and after a few more hours in the car, we arrive in the town square of Jinotega. Miriam and Hector show us around and tell us some of the local lore. Though we're still full from lunch, we try some more excellent Nicaraguan cuisine, and then load back into the cars. We climb into the hills and come to a stop in front of a brightly painted gate under a hand-painted sign. We're finally here. The farm is immaculate. Rows of bushes create a natural barrier between the road and the coffee fields. The shade trees are huge, and the scenery is stunning. I understand at once why Carlos and Liana fell in love with the farm 50 years ago. And I'm reminded of a story Miriam told us about her parents' very first harvest. Carlos and Liana had come to greet the seasonal pickers when they realized that many had brought their children with them to work in the fields. On the spot, Liana decided to find a way to educate those kids. Anyone who wanted to work at the El Recreo Coffee Estate was welcome, but their children would work in the classroom, not in the fields. As we arrive in what Miriam calls downtown Recreo, I see the school that Liana built on the farm. Up a small hill from downtown is the Ferrer family quarters. And all around, the sights and the sounds of the Nicaraguan rainforest. The whole place is to die for. And Carlos and Liana nearly did. The story of the El Recreo Coffee Estate is set against a turbulent history. The Revolution of 1979 and the Civil War that followed in the 80s. No part of Nicaragua was left unscathed. To keep them from being conscripted or killed by rebels, the Ferrers sent their children to a sister in the United States, where they were given asylum. Carlos and Liana stayed to protect the farm, but were arrested and jailed for years. When Liana had a stroke in prison, she and Carlos were finally allowed to flee to Costa Rica with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They didn't know if they would ever be able to return to Nicaragua. But the day finally came in 1987, and it was heartbreaking. In the 8 years since the Ferrays had been forced out, the farm had been destroyed. All of the equipment was gone. Most of the buildings were no longer standing, and large swaths of the coffee trees had been ripped out to make way for corn and other food crops. And there were strangers occupying the farm. Using her lawyer skills, Liana discovered that she and Carlos were still legal owners of the land. So she began negotiating to see if she could get everyone to leave peacefully. Eventually, the Ferrays paid the other families for their harvest in advance, and they agreed to clear out. As word spread in the community that the Ferray family was back at El Recreo, many of their former farm workers returned to help them rebuild. Carlos and Liana took this opportunity to sharpen the focus on their social and environmental missions. They set out to remake their farm as a central hub of the community, with a new school, a chapel, and a healthcare clinic. And they built permanent housing for the year-round workers and their families, with communal kitchens, indoor plumbing, a recreation area, laundry, and more. They also committed to improving the environmental footprint of the farm with solar power and water recycling, and they doubled down on sustainable agricultural practices for the coffee, coming up with an inventive new way of composting. Despite all of their incredible work and the value they created in their communities, the international coffee market price was so low for so long that Carlos and Liana were at risk of losing the farm again. This time, not to a revolution, but a bank. For years, Miriam and Hector worked themselves to the bone, trying to move coffee from El Recreo at a sustainable price. But when we met them, they had only sold about 25% of their crop for that year. It took a while to get all of the logistics ironed out, but in 2019, the El Recreo Coffee Estate became our second Farm Direct partner. Within a few months, Bigbie Coffee purchased all the coffee the Ferrays could provide. To date, that is more than 700,000 pounds and counting. The price El Recreo is paid is the amount they need to invest in people, planet, and community as they cultivate, process, and ship their coffee. Coffee from Carlos and Liana Ferray in Jinotega, Nicaragua. A name, a face, and a place for every cup of coffee we serve.